Alright guys, I'm so sorry for the lack of uploads last week. I've been sick as a dog for over a week and, completely lost my voice. It was not fun, but I've been busy during that time. Since I couldn't record commentary, I was like, well, I need to prep. So I've got like 3 different character guides, like nearly ready to go. And yes, that does include Daredevil. He will be up next. But today, we're doing Hawkeye. This is the full advanced guide on how to kick some serious butt on Hawkeye in Marvel Rivals. And I don't say this lightly, but Hawkeye might be the most busted character I've played yet. And I literally have 30 Lord characters in Marvel Rivals. And I'm not kidding around here, guys. You're going to see quads, pentas, hexas. Heck, there's even a 9-piece multi-kill in this video. But the bottom line is that a patient Hawkeye who understands the hero's strengths and limitations can do absurd things in this game. I'm talking 20 to 30 final blow matches on the regular. I've had people tell me they're reporting me for cheating. I've had Spider-Man mains dipping out of matches after I kill them for the 8th time. I've had TTVers absolutely crashing out on their streams. This hero is nuts. Although I will note, he's a very long Lord grind. Okay, most heroes take about 150 matches or around 20 hours of gameplay to get to Lord. Hawkeye takes about 25 to 26 hours to get to the Lord status, so considerably longer than average. But in this video, I'm going to teach you how to be a real piece of shit Hawkeye who can cause real problems for the other team. So let's dive in. I always like to start my guides with a quick summary of the hero's core gameplay loop. But with Hawkeye, I want to talk about what he isn't first, because I think it's really important, okay? He is not a backline sniper. I want to be upfront about this. If you are in the back line beside your healers or behind your healers, you will be considerably less effective. Hawkeye's arrows have travel time, and the further back you are, the harder it is to hit your targets because enemies move erratically. They don't just stand still, and it's a lot easier to predict where a target is going to be in a third of a second than where they're going to be in a full second, right? Next, Hawkeye is not a wing sniper. Okay, some heroes in hero shooters are meant to go find a perch on the peripherals at an elevated position where they can rain down sniper fire. That is not Hawkeye. In fact, if you do that, you'll die a lot and you will kill a lot less. There are 2 reasons for this. Hawkeye is slow as molasses and only has one real way to push enemies away from him. That means getting yourself isolated can be a death sentence most of the time. So don't get yourself isolated on purpose. The second reason is that Hawkeye's effectiveness skyrockets when you are hitting headshots. And hitting headshots is like, guys, 10 times easier when you're on the same vertical plane as your enemies. You just set your reticle at the head level and you start letting arrows fly. But if you're on a different vertical plane, i.e. higher or lower in altitude than your targets, then head level becomes a moving target, meaning aiming just got considerably more difficult. So where then does Hawkeye belong? Well, he belongs in the midline right behind your Vanguards. You want to be in clear sight of your healers, and you need to be able to flex to where you're needed. You'll see lots of kills in the gameplay where I turn around and I demolish a diver who is engaging my healers. But you'll also see me team firing enemy tanks down quickly with easy headshots. But the best way I can describe Hawkeye's gameplay loop is to compare him to playing with dominoes. You know how you just have to tip over the right domino in the right place at the right time to start a chain reaction? Okay, Hawkeye is really good at toppling the enemy dominoes in the correct sequence to create a complete and total fallout. This gameplay is completely full of team wipes, by the way, where I look into the crowd of targets and I find a healer in the back. And I drop that one domino first. And after that healer goes down, now the enemy front line is hyper exposed. So I find either another healer or a duelist, then I pick them out of the crowd and I drop them too. Now their survivability is demolished and their DPS is cut in half. And the rest of the dominoes start to fall in sequence. I know it's a little morbid, but it makes me think of that documentary I watched on the Ocean Gate submarine. At first, it was just the one pop of a single carbon fiber strand, and the whole thing just got a little bit weaker. And then it was 2 rapid pops, pop, pop, and then a rapid series of several pops, pop, 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 before the whole thing just collapsed. That's what Hawkeye does to a team. 1 pop, 2 pop, and then they start dropping like flies after that. Okay, let's get into his kit and break down the whole thing for you one piece at a time before we put it all back together in one cohesive package. Let's start with his primary fire. So Hawkeye has 2 firing modes. One is the piercing arrow and the other is the blast arrow. Now the piercing arrow is the main one you'll be using. It's an arrow that travels faster and does more damage the longer you draw the bow, okay? If you just tap the trigger with no charge, you're looking at 8 damage. At full charge, which is accomplished after 0.9 seconds, the arrow does 80 damage and travels at 180 meters per second. While drawing the bow and holding it, you will move 20% more slowly. Now, you used to move a lot slower than that, but they actually buffed him a while back, allowing him to strafe much faster, which is great and very important. Now, here's what's important to know. Hawkeye has a passive ability called Archer's Focus, where aiming at an enemy charges up the damage of his next shot. So it takes 0.9 seconds of aiming at a target to charge it up fully, same as the draw speed of the arrow. When it's fully charged, you'll hear an audio cue letting you know that you're at max charge. The catch is that the target has to be within 40 meters of you, which is still pretty good range, but it means you want to be in the middle, not the back line, right? You don't want to be in the midline, not the back line, and not on some weird flanking angle or up in a perch. At max charge, Archer's Focus will add 75 damage to your arrow. Now add that to the base 80 damage of the fully charged arrow, and now you've got an arrow that's going to do 155 damage. But the arrow can crit, meaning if you hit the enemy in the head, you'll do 310 damage. That's nuts. Every healer can be one shot. Heck, half the roster is dead in one shot. So as Hawkeye, you need to be patient. You need to take the shot that's right. Not just take any old shot, okay? You'll be tempted to just spam arrows. Don't. Fully charge it. Wait for the right shot. Take that one. That will yield a lot more kills. You'll see times where I hold the arrow and I wait for my health to get dangerously low before I let that arrow actually fly. That's because I'm not panicking. Don't panic. It doesn't matter if I have 200 HP or if I have 2 HP. As long as the other guy goes down for sure. I can always get healed up after that. I'll stand right in there and I'll take a ton of damage, but I'll make sure that I take the shot I want rather than miss 4 panic arrows in a row with little to no charge to them. Now, any Hawkeye worth his weight will shut down support ults. It's that simple.
Us against the world!
Was that my arrow?
Us against the world!
I am too good.
Disappear! It's now or never! Disappear!
Ancient tablets.
You're welcome. Did that show weak human eyes?
There are at least a dozen support alt kills in this video alone. The fact is, when you charge up that arrow with Archer's Focus, you can one-shot kill almost every healer right out of their support alt. That goes for Luna Snow, Invisible Woman, Cloak and Dagger. I mean, you just train your aim on them and wait for the right moment to let that arrow fly. Now, this is often that crucial first domino that needs to drop. It's the healer in their ult. You drop them and suddenly you have a whole team that's out of position. They rallied to that ult thinking they'd be safe there, but now the ult is suddenly gone and they're all hyper exposed. This is a huge deal. This is some of the best value you can bring to your team as a Hawkeye. But the next thing I want to talk about is aiming. Man, I know a lot of people avoid Hawkeye because they think aiming is going to be too hard. Let me tell you, it's not as hard as you think. I noted earlier that you want to be on the same vertical plane as your enemies. That's going to make it a lot easier. But you really just want to set your reticle at head level and then use your left hand to aim. Okay, for me, that's A and D on the keyboard. I'm strafe aiming. For controller users, that's the left thumbstick to strafe back and forth and track targets that way. But that's really the trick to landing more headshots. Just set the reticle at head level with your right hand or your right thumb, and then use your left hand or your left thumb to strafe aim after that. And you'll start to dial in just how far you need to lead your shots. But here's how I do it. You can see here that at a moderate distance, I'm just barely leading the shot a little bit off the target. No big deal at all, not a big lead. Obviously, the further away you are, the more you'll have to lead the target. But if you're on controller, then I strongly encourage you to turn aim assist down or entirely off outside of 20 meters. Aim assist will screw you over hard. You'll be fighting against your own reticle to pull it off the target so that you can actually lead your shot. Okay, let's mention blast arrows. Honestly, these things are not great. You swap to the alternate firing mode and you shoot 3 explosive arrows at once. They spread apart, dealing 16 damage if they impact something directly, and they create a tiny localized explosion for 34 damage each in a 3-meter spherical radius. This makes them really good at destroying environments like breakable walls, Groot walls, invisible woman shields, things like that. But against an actual opponent, like even a dive hero, honestly, you're much better off just landing a regular shot on them. I've seen people recommend just shooting at their feet for the blast radius damage, but that's honest. I don't like that. I think it's kind of dumb. Like maybe you get 68 damage at best. A normal shot from your bow is 80 damage plus however much archer's focus you've gained by aiming at them for a potential of, 155 damage body shot or double that to the head. Like, here's a series of kills I got on an enemy Spider-Man. I killed him a lot. I mean a lot. Eventually, this Spider-Man decided to rage quit the match. He was so dang tilted at me. And I didn't use the explosive arrows a single time. I just straight up shot him. The enemy team told me after the match that he was raging in the team chat about the Hawkeye. So just use the regular shot. The reward is so much better that way. Especially when you understand that, especially with Spider-Man, there's a downtime where in between web zips, they kind of hover for just a second while they target a new surface. That's the moment I like to strike. And with Black Panthers, you get this a lot of times at the end of their dashes is really when you want to focus on them, or if they're in the middle of popping their ult. I'll talk about that later. Let's move on to the Crescent Slash. This is your shift ability on PC. You unsheath a katana and slash forward, launching up enemies that are hit. This is simple. If people get close to you, and I use the word close loosely, like you hit shift and you slap them with a sword, and it does 40 damage, and it launches enemies up, disrupting any movement abilities. It literally has a range of 8 meters. Like, it's a really long sword. And there are a lot of applications here. The simplest one is just to simply shove someone away who is diving you. Like a Spider-Man, a Black Panther, a Daredevil, a melee hero. You'll see lots of it in this gameplay. I hit them for 40 damage, knock them back so you can charge up a follow-up shot on them with your bow and arrow, okay? But I also use it to shove Spider-Man away from me when he's ulting me. Yeah, so if you're the Amazing Spider-Man, you use this shift ability, it knocks them back with a sword, and now they're outside of the range of their ult, and you're safe.
Don't mess with the Amazing Spider-Man!
Extracting those resources.
You can also use it to survive Doctor Strange when he does his ult too. The Eye of, and then you slash them and it knocks them away, right? I use it against Venoms when I weaken them, and then they try to web zip away, right? You take a bunch of shots at them, they activate their blue HP, and now they'll stay engaged for a couple more seconds, do a couple more attacks, and that's usually when they try to zip away. So if you time it right, you can cancel out that web zip and force them to stay in a fight they don't want to be in. But check this out. Here, I get skewered by an enemy Angela. She carries me to a hole where she intends to drop me to my death. But instead of falling to my death, I immediately hit her with the Crescent Slash to interrupt her flight. That makes her fall straight down to her death. Uno reverse card right there. And then I use my double jump to get back to safety. So she basically got herself killed. It's hilarious. But I just saved the slash for when enemies get close to you. And if you want, then you can get creative with it whenever the context allows. Okay, let's move on to the Hypersonic Arrow. This is a core part of your kit. You should basically always be throwing this out if it's cooled down. On activation, you do a short animation and then launch an arrow forward that does damage in a small spell field. And then a second wave will follow that first one that also does damage in a little bit of a wider spell field that also applies a slow effect and knocks down flyers. You're looking at 55 damage on the initial impact, 55 damage on the slow debuff second impact. Now, in order to get the full benefit of this arrow, listen, you must be at ground level. I want to make sure that's abundantly clear. I've talked about this in several parts of the video. If you're on some elevated flank as Hawkeye, then you're throwing. There are singular moments where you should do that, right? Singular moments in a match where you should get to a place of elevation, but then get right back down to ground level. Like if you're avoiding an enemy ultimate, stuff like that. But otherwise, being at ground level is key to making full use of the Hypersonic Arrow. That's because this thing penetrates targets and shields. Yep, You'll see me use it to finish off a weak Doctor Strange in the gameplay, even though he pulls up his shield to walk backwards to safety. So when you use this, you want to line up all the enemies in a row and launch it through the bulk of the enemy team, trying to hit as many enemies as possible. If they're slowed, they're a lot easier to hit with your fully charged standard arrows. So use this all the time. As soon as it's cooled down, use it. Honestly, I don't even use it much against flyers because they have to sit still long enough for the second impact to hit them. They usually don't do that. You're going to have much more success with this ability, primarily focusing on shooting it straight into the crowd of enemies that you've lined up. Alright, real quick, let's hit the Ronin Slash and the Skyward Leap. Ronin Slash is just your standard melee attack. You swing your short sword twice and then you put it away. It does weak damage, but it can reflect incoming projectiles. Note that it does not block explosions or splash damage or the effects of projectiles. So this ability it's difficult to time. I don't encourage really going out of your way to try to like set up an opportunity to use this. Honestly, the only way I use it is as a little damage mitigation when I'm backing up or I'm backing into cover. So you can use it when you leave cover as well, just in case someone was waiting and had their reticle trained, to right there, just in case when you step out they could shoot you. You could do it then. It can eat a lot of projectile abilities, which is great, but you got to know when those projectiles are most likely to come. So like I said, I mostly use it when I'm trying to back out of a bad situation, and it doesn't reflect projectiles back at the sender, it just cancels them out, okay? I actually use this melee a lot as a way of canceling my primary shot. That's the way I use it the most. Like if I draw an arrow and I'm slowly walking, because I've got the movement penalty while the arrow is drawn, but I decide I want to cancel the draw and I want to move quickly again, I'll just melee to cancel the charge instead of shooting the arrow. Okay, shooting the arrow tanks your accuracy stat if that matters to you, but it also gives away your position as well. So you'll see me, just melee canceling my charge a lot in the background gameplay, where I melee just to cancel the draw so I can move freely again. Next we have the Skyward Leap, just a fancy name for a double jump. You double jump. You do this to reposition, to avoid ground-based enemy ultimates like Jeff, to get a better vantage point on an enemy behind cover. Maybe you weaken them, they run behind cover, you double jump over it and get a free shot from straight down. You can use it to avoid enemy tackles like Angela. You get the idea. But one other fun way to use it is to carry your momentum forward when activating your ultimate. Okay, Hawkeye's ult has this awkward activation animation that kind of sucks, so it just stops you dead in your tracks. But if you double jump forward and then activate the ult while you're airborne, you'll do that animation while traveling forward through the air to a more desired location that's closer to the enemy, instead of just like standing still and doing the activation. Because then you do the call out, the enemy hears it, they've got time to get to cover. So that being said, let's move on to talk about this ultimate ability, Hunter's Scythe. So on activation, Hawkeye does a short animation, and then enemies that he can see will leave behind after images that can be damaged instead. If you shoot the after images, the damage will be transferred to the target. But there's a lot more to it than that. So Hawkeye gets much faster draw speed during his ult. And the Archer's focus passive is always fully activated, meaning every draw is set to 100 charge for that additional damage. But you still have to fully draw the bow to get full damage. It's just a much faster draw. So if you fully draw the bow and you release the shot, you're going to do max potential damage. But if you just tap spam the shots, you'll send out way more shots for less damage, but that damage adds up very quickly. So a full draw in the ult is around 170 damage. A tap shot is around 90. Now, I recommend tap spamming. That's going to drop enemies a lot faster, actually, as you can see in the gameplay. But there are two more things I want to clear up. First, the arrow can crit. I repeat, in your ultimate, you can crit enemies for one-shot kills. Okay, the thing is, you have to hit the target itself, not the after image. So the after image cannot be critted, but the actual enemy can. So whenever possible, shoot the target itself, especially if it's a tank. They'll drop much faster because you can actually hit headshots. But you can also use it to drop support ults too. Since you can fire rapidly at full 100 Archer's focus, your chances of hitting that headshot are really good. Notice here, I pop the ult, and then I take several shots before I finally hit the head on this Luna Snow, and it takes her out of her ultimate. So you can, I repeat, you can crit the enemy. You cannot crit the after images. So you can pop the ult, spam shots at the enemy healer in their ult, and shoot for the head. The second thing I want to mention is that your Hypersonic Arrow is really, really good in your ult, so use it. It took me way too long to figure this out, but since enemies are leaving behind after images, you can just shoot that Hypersonic Arrow into the crowd. So this is a great option for doing huge chunk damage to a crowd, but in my testing, it doesn't look like the Hypersonic Arrow will damage more than one after image of the same target, right? So if one guy has 2 after images behind him, the Hypersonic Arrow will only damage one of those 2, even if you line it up through all of those after images. So it won't like one shot kill somebody, but it will do like double damage to a single target. And then obviously if more people are clustered up, you're spreading that damage throughout this really large crowd of enemies. So it's a really good option to prime people. All right, let's bring this thing home and bring the whole kit together. So remember, as Hawkeye, your job is to find a key domino to push over, usually a healer or a fringe duelist. Once that one drops, you start knocking over the next one and the next one and the next one. Hawkeye's specialty is quite literally team wipes. Even if he doesn't get all the kills, he's setting up his team for success in a team brawl. Play in the mid line between your vanguards and your healers, but you have to have the eyes of a hawk. It's right there in the name. And you need to look in both directions. So when looking downrange, your job is to pick the healers, out of the crowd and weave your arrows between the vanguards to drop them, and to find poke duelists in the crowd as well and weave your arrow into the enemy backline, drop those as well. And that'll dramatically weaken the enemy front line in turn. Now, a quick note about that. If your preferred target is out of range, if they're too far back to activate your archer's focus, you can actually charge your archer's focus up to 100% by aiming at an enemy tank, and then pull your reticle off the tank and to the target that you want to shoot, like the healer behind them, and let the max damage arrow fly. You can even charge up your archer's focus on Loki clones too. But like I said, you're literally Hawkeye. You need to have some solid awareness and have the eyes of a hawk. So keep an eye out for dive enemies looking to prey on your backline. Be close enough to drop back when needed and provide support. It's a lot better if the diver has to focus you, because your healer can just keep you up. But if they get to tunnel vision on your healer for free, they're likely walking away with a kill. So insert yourself in the fight, body block for your healer. You only need 1 or 2 shots to put them down. And use your Crescent Slash to disrupt their movement-based combos and attacks and put them on their back foot. You're trying to take away the things that they've come to rely on, and that's what the Crescent Slash is for, so you'll have the upper hand. And note that Black Panther in his ult is a very easy target. They hold still for a brief moment to charge up that Bast image. That's when you get the free headshot on them. So do not rush your shots. Be patient, be methodical. Sometimes you'll need to stay in there and tank some damage just to ensure you get the right shot off at the right time. Hawkeye's voice lines even reaffirm this when he says that his superpowers are patience and common sense. Stay on the same vertical plane as your enemies when you can help it. Set that reticle at head level and strafe to line up shots while only using your right hand to make minor changes most of the time. But remember that Hawkeye is slow. You're not going anywhere fast. So be where you are on purpose. Never casually mosey into a space that you don't belong. Because if something goes south, you're not likely to get out of there. Which is why you should also default to fight over flight. If you're overextended, usually you're more likely to get a kill than you are to get away. So at least that way, you don't give the enemy a free numbers advantage when you die over your team. And that's the guide, y'all. I hope you found it helpful and informative, and hopefully you'll go on to have incredible success with Hawkeye. I think he's one of the most underrated heroes in the game. Absolutely insane final hit potential on this hero. Take the time to learn him, dial in his projectiles, and you'll be a serious force to be reckoned with in Marvel Rivals. Thanks for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, would you let me know by leaving a like on it, as that's the best free way to support the content right here on YouTube. And consider subscribing for additional Rivals content. Be warm and well fed, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.